We are the Church of the Larger Fellowship, a Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundary, working toward creating a global spiritual community, rooted in profound love, which cultivates wonder, imagination, and the courage to act. Adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic has been difficult for many bricks and mortar congregations. Early on in the pandemic, we were in a unique position to assist many congregations with the transition. We hosted special episodes of The VUU, provided advice and counseling to religious professionals, and trained congregations for live streaming worship, all while providing robust online programming for our members. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine to our letter writing ministry, we have found ways to build connection and community even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison, and investing in innovative ministry. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and to fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Larger Fellowship. We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of The VUU. The VUU is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message.
Hola, beloveds. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, even though we are just a few minutes late into our show. Thank you for hanging out there and waiting for us to go live. I am so excited that you are joining us for the first view of the 2022 year. Yay! Yes, it is here. We're so excited. And we're thrilled that you're here with us. As always, our hosts of our show will give you a brief introduction to ourselves and where we are, and then we'll do a little bit of a UU roundup and then get right to our guests, which we are so thrilled and excited to have with us today. I'm Christina Rivera. Today I'm coming to you from beautiful Augusta County, Virginia, where it is, just a really warm 30-something degrees with snow on the ground and more 8 to 12 inches of snow coming on Sunday. So yesterday I was in Puerto Rico where it was 87 degrees. And I'm really wondering, I know there's no sympathy, but I'm just really, I'm questioning my process here of what the hell I'm doing. So that's me. Michael, how are you doing?
Hello, everyone. This is Michael Tino joining you from Peekskill, New York. We have a brief respite today of actually decent temperatures before the air will hurt our face again this weekend. But that's winter. It's January in New York, and someone said to me that they liked winter, and I had to admit that I really don't, but I love fall and spring, and winter is the price I pay for the beauty of fall and the beauty of spring. That's the way I look at it, though it would sometimes be nice to just go to Puerto Rico while it happens here. So it's good to be with you all. Aisha Hauser, how are you?
Christmas and between Christmas and New Year, where it felt like northern New Jersey. It was just snow, and that didn't melt. Here, snow melted about a day, and it took about 2 weeks. So now we're just back to puddles and rain and mud. Lovely here in the Northwest. So, and today is my son's 21st birthday. I need to name that because it's birthing. I was there. Yeah. So I just want to name that when your youngest is 21, and I feel 28 myself, so it's wild. So I texted him. This is the new world. He lives in Colorado, near not I don't know if he's near you, Emily. I know nothing about Colorado. He's in Gunnison. But it's definitely a thing, and I'm like, oh, youngest, who is now 21, an adult, and I have no say over your life, which is annoying. AF. So anyway, that's me. New Year. Heard Mercury going into retrograde 4 times in 2022, and I wish that meant nothing to me, but now I'm like into astrology, so I'm mad at Mercury. So I'm just gonna leave it there. Kiana Dene, how do you feel about Mercury today? And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, friends. So I used to be a part of this co-hosting squad, and I'm revisiting what that means and what that can look like. Hint, wink, hint. And and I just called Michael up or texted him and was like, hey, can I hang out with you guys sometimes? He's like, yeah. So I am in Ann Arbor, Michigan. You know, I went outside yesterday and I'm pretty sure it was in the 30s and I had on a hoodie. It doesn't seem really cold to me. I'm like, oh, it feels normal. So that tells you what a Midwest gal I am when 30 feels like, okay, like my coat's in the car. Actually, it is. So that's where I'm at. Things are good, and I'm excited to be with this amazing community of people. I'm going to pass it to my friend Don.
Hey everybody, I'm Don Fortune. I am here in Egg Harbor City, New Jersey, where we get mostly Christina's used weather. It like comes from her area and it sort of goes over Washington and Baltimore and then comes down to the coast before it heads up towards New York to upset them. And so we've got sort of that same sort of, I grew up in New England, so looking out the window right now, it looks like November, perpetually November. It's this palette of grays and browns and grays and browns and grays and browns. And we had some snow, but it melted. So it's just, yeah, it looks like November in New England. But yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. I'm glad to be here. And yeah, although I'm getting less fond of the cold as I age, that is the truth. All right, I'm excited about our guest today, so I'm gonna hand it back to Christina, who will introduce our friends.
Yes, I will. So today we are thrilled to be joined by the team from Nourish. Nourish? I never know how to say it, so they're going to tell me how to say it. And before we do those introductions, we're going to do our brief UU roundup where, you know, I just want to say we see you folks. We see all the congregations that are making the pivot back to online services. We see the, you know, just the way that we are all continuing to make it up as we go along in our UU congregations and communities. And yeah, I just, you know, let's just give a shout out to everybody who is working in a church right now, because it is not easy. It's not easy to know what we're doing next week, let alone next month. And just, you know, take this time, take this next 40 minutes to just relax, listen to us on your radio or in your car or wherever it is. If you need to crawl into somewhere with some Ritz crackers and beverage of choice and cry, we're here with you. We know it's a thing. We really do, and we're with you. So UU Roundup today, we don't have a lot for you. I will note, though, that the Article 2 Study Commission has released um, a individual survey on their website. If you don't already have their website linked into your browser or whatever, I just put it into the chat and we'll link it in the show notes. But it's really important to be taking a look at this and checking in on this this group, every month or so. The Article 2 Study Commission is going to be doing some really important work for our faith over this next year. And I think one of the things that sometimes we hear from UUs is, oh, I didn't know such and such was happening, or nobody asked me. Somebody is asking you. Yes, you who are listening or watching this right now, somebody is asking you. They have the Article 2 individual survey, which will remain open until March 31st, 2022. And this is your opportunity, to say something about this. So please, please, please take the opportunity. Don't, wait for 2 years until they come to GA with a resolution and then say nobody asked me, because they are. They're going to be asking not just this way, lots of other ways. But this is your moment. So anything else on UU Roundup? I know we don't have a lot because it's just the beginning of the new year and people are just like trying to figure shit out on this whole pandemic thing. All right. So today we are welcoming the team from Nourish, from Reverend Emily. Emily, I should have asked you how to correctly pronounce your last name. So I'm going to give it a go and then you can correct me. Conger. Emily is an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister and co-founder of Nourish. She's a nearly lifelong UU who is called to help people connect to Unitarian Universalism in innovative ways. She served as minister of the Longmont UU Presence for more than 4 years. The Longmont UU Presence is an emerging ministry based in Colorado, invested in food justice through Dinner Church and Garden Church. Emily received her Master's of Divinity from Meadville Lombard. She's served for many years as a leader in youth and young adult communities. Amen. And Emily's committed towards working towards intersectional justice, especially racial justice and queer justice. Whoop, whoop. Outside of UU contexts, Emily worked at Planned Parenthood and Rutgers University and lived in South Africa and Chile. Emily lives in an updated address from her bio, which she'll let us know, with her partner Ted, toddler Lily Abundance, and extended family. They enjoy biking, going for walks, playing cooperative board games, and eating homemade bread together. I need to come to that household. Also joining us today is Reverend Aisha Ansano. Aisha, we've got all the Aishas and Aishas here with us today, is an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister and co-founder of Nourish. She believes that deep relationship building is crucial in the struggle for justice in our world and is planning a dinner church community. We are so excited to talk about that. Aisha is called to serve as a prophetic and pastoral presence to those seeking spiritual community and connection. She believes there is room at the table for everyone. Amen. And that gathering over a meal is one of the best ways to build and strengthen community. By cooking and eating together, we allow ourselves to be vulnerable in a way that we often are not. And we open ourselves and our communities to deeper and fuller connection. Hallelujah. Aisha received her Master's of Divinity from Harvard Divinity School. And for her MDiv project, she interviewed dinner church pastors around the country, researched the anthropology and theology of food, and crafted a non-Christian dinner church liturgy that was the beginnings of her UU dinner church dreams. She's led dinner church for various groups of different ages at several different churches. Aisha lives in Malden, Massachusetts with her partner Matt, where she's the affiliated community minister at First Parish in Malden. She enjoys cooking and baking for friends, learning aerial skills and ballet, and reading fantasy and young adult fiction. Yay! Welcome to the room and welcome to the VUU. We're so excited you're here. And yes, here's everybody on the VUU. Look at, we've got like a bazillion people on the VUU today. So we are super excited. So just jump right in and tell us, how did Nourish start? What, when, where, how?
Great question. So Nourish is a product of the pandemic, which means that we are starting to come up on 2 years, which is wild. But as you heard from our bios, both Emily and I have been involved in dinner church before that and had been in conversation. And then we were both getting lots of asks from folks about how having conversations about the church and to see what we could do and what we could offer to our folks at the beginning of this very strange time that we still find ourselves in now. And so we have been figuring it out since then.
Sure. My name is Emily Conger, and I'm delighted to be with y'all. Being a part of Nourish has been so beautiful as a way to help people connect to an embodied experience in a time when people feel really separate and disembodied, and helping them connect in with themselves and their community in ways that feel really authentic and vulnerable, and help people to feel that they are a part of something larger when in the rest of their lives they might feel more isolated. And we've been pivoting with Nourish. We started out by leading services for folks around the country. We've done a number of Sunday mornings with brunch church and special events with religious education communities. And we also have led installations, and now we are focusing a lot of our attention on a nourishing network for religious professionals, because we seek to nourish the nourishers. We know that a lot of our folks are really struggling right now, and we want to create a network where we can feel held and supported and support one another as we go forward. One of the other projects that we're really excited about is a collaboration with the Article 2 Study Commission that you mentioned in the roundup, where we created an entire worship kit, a full script and other resources, so that any youth group in the UUA can pick up a script and lead a dinner church worship that helps folks tap into the values that are most important to the youth and help us see what our values are as Unitarian Universalists in order to help shape the present and future of our principles and purposes. So we're really excited about that.
So what, let's start there. Like, what is dinner church? Like, can help us think about it. What does it look like, smell like, taste like, feel like, sound like?
You're asking all the questions, Christina, that we like to talk about with all the things we do. I always like to say dinner church is exactly what it sounds like. It's dinner and it's church, and those things happen together, instead of, you know, maybe we have a service and then we have coffee hour, or we have a potluck and then we go to a Vespers service. Dinner church is a worship service that has a meal as part of it, as one of the ways that we gather. And so, as like Emily was talking about, it's really embodied. So it really is about all the senses, bringing people around the table to have conversations, to build relationship, And I think for a number of reasons, logistically, one of the things is people need to eat, so they're going to show up when you feed them. That's important. But it also kind of smooths over some of maybe the more awkward parts of trying to get to know people, right? If you're having a conversation, you have something in common, you're there at the meal. Also, if there's an awkward silence, we can just all pretend it's speaking something, and we don't have to worry about letting that sit. And there's something about sharing a meal. It actually makes us more physically similar to each other, to eat the same things and take that into our body. And so we're having this this communal collective experience that is actually physically and literally bringing us close together, and doing that on a spiritual level too.
Ooh, say more about that. So either one of you, please say more about that that physical part of it, where we're actually like physically experiencing the same thing.
Do you want to jump in, or I can?
No, go for it.
All right, I'll jump in. So what I love about having a shared experience is that I've heard for years that we are what we eat. And so when we consume anything, our cells in our body are fundamentally changed by that experience of eating. And so when we eat shared foods, we become more similar to one another. And we can also tap in to ancestors through the food that we choose to share together, to these cultural contexts and these histories that spread far back. We're also connected to all of the people who helped bring the food to our table. So there are so many ways that we are connecting to greater cycles of interdependence and ancestral lineages by eating together, because we can both celebrate our differences and diversity and find ways to find our common humanity in the balance of it.
One of the things I think that Emily was just saying that feels so important is that wider connection. There's the piece of we're all in, well, if we're in person, we're in the same room eating the same thing. But it's not just about those particular people who are gathered there in the moment. And so that feels really powerful. And so one thing I will say is that the Nourish experience has all been virtual so far. We're just starting to dip our toes into multi-platform offerings, but both Emily and I have had experience with in-person dinner church in a number of different ways, and that can take different forms. But one thing I think that can be really powerful is inviting people to share in the creation of the meal, if that speaks to them, right? So that might mean saying, we're going to cook together 45 minutes early, or it's potluck, or bring, we're going to provide the meal, but people bring dessert, or whatever that looks like. Inviting people to be part of co-creating the meal in a way that also feels nourishing to them, that we don't want to make it a requirement that is hard for folks. And one thing that I found is that whether or not we are all cooking together, cleaning up is part of the liturgy. That's something we do together because that's an important part of sharing meals, right? So we're taking a break in the more worship feeling pieces, and we're cleaning up, and then we're coming back together and ending the service in that way.
Oh, I love that. One of the things that came up for me is I love to cook, and part of my Egyptian culture is food. And basically, you eat what you're given, and there's no arguing. But one of the things I learned about inclusivity, especially in Unitarian Universalist congregations, when we'd have potlucks at the congregation around different holidays, is when there would be signs on each dish. So it wasn't that we said, don't bring a certain thing unless someone had a life-threatening allergy. Aside from a life-threatening allergy, and then we'd say, please avoid nuts of all kind. people would bring what they wanted to share, and then put a list of the ingredients. And what I realized is like, oh, okay, because my frame of reference is, I make these beautiful meals, but then it's not inclusive to people who maybe don't like certain things or allergic to certain things. So to me, I learned more about how to be inclusive while breaking bread, and there's just so many layers of how to be in community in a way that is profound, because breaking bread together is profound and beautiful and communal, and something I think when we do it well as Unitarian Universalists, it's fabulous. So I really appreciate this ministry. It's exciting to hear about. And I love how I know in youth group, one of the spiritual practices of when cons or whatever is cleanup. So I appreciate you naming that for all ages. Kiana Dene, you are muted. And I think you want to say something.
I know. I was seeing if you were paying attention to me. That's why I stayed muted. But I guess I was wondering, how does this experience shift from a meal at a table to a spiritual experience? What is the bridge that folks are walking over? How does this move from my family and I having dinner into a church or spiritual experience for us?
I can start with that. I love that you asked this question, because it's not just a potluck, right? We are using ancient spiritual technology, because this is a tradition that goes way back that we are adapting to a modern setting for finding ways to build trust and vulnerability and community together. So
I want to just say out loud, you just called it ancient spiritual technology, and it literally took my breath away. I was like, whoa, that just sat, and I just don't want to let that go for a second. Because it's such the phrasing is so beautiful and it's real, right? Sitting around a fire and having a meal together and ending your day together was something that I'm pretty sure all of my ancestors way back did. And so when I hear about it being something ancient that is not new, that I just get to receive, that changes it. That statement alone shifted it for me. I was like, oh, that's why. So you can keep talking. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just was so enamored with that phrasing. I'm gonna write that in my journal. I'm gonna think about that for a while. It was beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe we all need to journal about the ancient spiritual technology, right? What is here? And this is not a new fad that we are reinventing here. This goes way back and goes deep, and is part of so many different cultural traditions. The ones that we have adapted have come from a more Christian tradition that stems from Judaism before it, and but we are building a Unitarian Universalist dinner church liturgy that taps into a style of worship that is inherently Unitarian Universalist, embodied worship that leverages the wisdom of the community through small group sharing, and doesn't have as much of a hierarchy in who is leading and sharing the message, is the worship style of our youth and young adults. And as someone who came through Unitarian Universalism, I love being able to bridge those worlds of youth and young adulthood to the full church community, because this is Unitarian Universalist worship. And the ways that we do that are by having small groups share and report out what their embodied learning is, what their lived experience is of a certain topic, and bringing that wisdom in the room, which breaks down the hierarchies, and also helps dismantle white supremacy culture in small ways that can be really profound and beautiful.
Yeah. I was gonna say, Emily, we're just like always on the same page. I feel like as each other. You started talking, I was like, oh, I want to talk about youth and young adults, and I want to talk about white supremacy culture, and then that's where you got us. But I think I can't remember how much of this is in my bio, but Emily and I both have done a lot of work with youth and young adults and youth ministry in particular before moving into this piece of our ministry. And it's part of the reason the Article 2 commission asking us to write that worship kit felt so powerful, because we feel like, oh, we know how to do that. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do with Nourish is really take all the things we know are so powerful in youth and young adult worship and bring it into the wider Unitarian space. I think that piece of dismantling white supremacy culture is so important, because one, I think that it's really important to keep that link that is an inherently Unitarian Universalist thing. And two, I think it's also an inherent thing in youth and young adult spaces, that flattening out of hierarchy and coming from the heart and the gut and the spirit and not just from the head, are all these things that happen in a lot of spaces in Unitarian Universalism. And then also often Sunday morning is one person in the pulpit talking, and we're all up here intellectual and figuring it out. And so what it means to actually get into our bodies, which we can do by eating and activities and having conversations that are not just intellectual, but what we feel and what we know in our bodies, feels really, really powerful and is really familiar to a lot of folks in different ways from different spaces in their lives. And that is part of what feels really important about doing this work and inviting people into it.
Do you find that engaging in the practice of sharing a meal, just engaging in that practice of eating, that embodied practice, sort of cracks open some sort of like avenue to spiritual depth that's not like otherwise there? I mean, I think about um, the reason I'm a Unitarian Universalist is because of what we called the Sunday Night Dinner Club, which was a group of 10 friends that I had in graduate school, and we would cook dinner together every Sunday, and then eat it and spend the entire evening engaged in conversation. And it wasn't planned conversation, there wasn't liturgy around it, so like it was different from what you're doing, but the conversation, it just, there was something about eating together that made that experience deeper. And it's where I got invited to come to a Unitarian Universalist worship for the first time. So do you find that's the case in the dinner church that you do?
Yeah, that just made me think of something Emily said on a call the other day when we were talking with someone about potentials for collaboration, which is that like we don't all want to have every conversation like this, right? That is actually extremely vulnerable, which I think we've been remembering and relearning in pandemic times, that we're just staring at each other. But that there's something about kind of logistically just knowing that you're doing something else, that you're eating, that you're, getting this and getting this refill helps settle people in a different way. And I just, as soon as you started asking that question, Michael, I was thinking, oh yeah, that's like that. And I think there are other levels too, but there's a little bit of it gives you something to do and be a little more comfortable and settled, in a way that like, let's just sit down and have a chat is not quite the same. Emily, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I don't have anything profound to add, just that I think, Michael, your experience is something that a lot of people can relate to, that they have had powerful conversations and heart-to-hearts with people over a shared drink or meal or something really sharing a small snack with someone else. It helps to settle folks in a way that can be really powerful. And there are folks who write books on it and study it as well. I don't have that wisdom at my fingertips.
I have a question because I think now we're in the new year, January, and one of the things that comes up for people, because we do live in a violent extractive capitalist society, is diet culture and resolutions. And I posted the other day on Facebook, "There is no wrong way to have a body," one of my favorite new t-shirts that I own. So there's also, yes, the spiritual, beautiful, all of this around food and how we nourish ourselves. And I'm curious if either of you have, I don't know that you've encountered it, but talked about kind of for some folks, how the charged nature, not just of food, but also alcohol. I mean, I know in our spaces, for a long time, it felt like there was a denial that there is substance abuse in our spaces. And should we have alcohol when we have service auctions and brick and mortar? So I'm curious around also the, maybe some of the ways food has been challenging for some people.
Yeah, I will just start by saying that this is something that we recently have said that we need to dig deeper into. I think we both feel like we have a kind of basic understanding that it is the case that not everyone has a comforting relationship with food or with sharing meals. And that we want to do a little more intentional work around that, continue to bring Dinner Church into Unitarian Universalist spaces. I will say on the alcohol piece that when I've led dinner churches in person, I first didn't know I needed to say not to bring alcohol. And then I learned that I did need to say that, but that it felt important to me that it be a space that people felt welcome to, and that, there are other levels there, but it's the same reason that also when I do in-person dinner churches, we do vegetarian food, because it just meets more people's needs. It's also cheaper, which helps, but there are a few things we can do to say, okay, here's kind of a base level we're gonna start at, but it is the thing that we've kind of named along the way of doing this work, is we need to do some more intentional learning and conversation and discussion about how we hold the space and the reality that there are people for whom food is a really complicated and traumatic experience, and we want this to be a space that can be welcoming to them if that's possible. So it's a great question. We are holding and figuring that out. So I will say, if anyone has any resources or thoughts and you want to share those in the chat, we would love to dig in.
I wanted to ask a little bit, so as you're talking and just being in community with you, I know that relationship matters intensely for you all. And as you were just talking, it made me think about the role of covenant, and if there's a space in the model for covenant, and how can covenant be used to cultivate those tender spaces around alcohol or diet, or resolve conflict when it happens in that space.
I think you named the answer in your question, that absolutely we can use covenant as a tool to help us navigate all of those challenging, creative challenges that are in here.
Sometimes as you use, I think we like the word covenant, and we get scared of the word covenant as a culture. We want it when it meets our need, and we don't want it when we think we're going to be penalized by it. And so I think we have this tremendous opportunity to re-understand what covenant is and how it can be used as a tool to bring us back into alignment, as opposed to a tool to harm us. And I've come to realize in the last year how important a covenant is. Those 4 or 5 little sentences can be the binding tape to keep us in a relationship together, as opposed to something else. And so I get excited about relationship, I get excited about covenant, and I get excited about food. And so I'm hoping to find ways to engage your work, which leads me to a different question, which is, how can folks engage your work? How are the ways that folks can lean in and be a part of this dynamic situation? I see you guys playing rock, paper, scissors with your eyes.
Our 2 years of like, are you going to answer this or am I going to answer this? Well, I will start off by saying that, you know, we have a lot of different ways that we have collaborated with folks. And so the easiest thing is always go to our website, book yourself on our Calendly. We do a free consultation for everyone with no, right? We basically get on the call and say, what are your needs? What do we do? How can we put those together? So that is kind of base level. If we have been on many calls with folks who said, I heard about this and it sounded cool. And that's the level they're coming in at, and we go from there. I think Emily mentioned the Nourishing Network at the beginning, which is for religious professionals, which is a space for sharing resources and deepening together spiritually. It's an experiential learning community. We're going to co-create it. We are still figuring out what it is, but our hope is that that's a space for religious professionals to kind of have an ongoing community to explore some of these questions. And then the kind of next level for communities and congregations is you can hire us to collect something, whether it's a one-time service or you want to kickstart something in your congregation. But that all comes through schedule 30 minutes with us. We'll dream together. We'll figure out what comes next. And that has been the joy and the whatever else of this time, right, is that we've been able to work with folks around the country, which has been really wonderful. Right now, Emily's in Colorado and I'm in Massachusetts. So we've actually only met in person 4 times, but we have worked very closely together otherwise. And so, you know, we get to collaborate with each other and with other folks and figure out what that means. And so for all that there are so many hard things about this time, it has given us the opportunity to get to collaborate with different folk and different ways of doing this work. And we're both, I think, pretty excited about whatever it is that you are interested in doing. So just get on our calendar and we will start dreaming together. Emily, is there anything I'm missing there? Let's dream together.
Well, and I note that we have someone on our Facebook live feed who's watching from France. So you know, there's a whole culture around shared food in France. Nourish might go international.
We're very open to that.
So, you know, I think it's important, you know, as we come to the top of the hour, that like this is a ministry that you are doing, and you are consulting with people, but this is your livelihood too, right? This is, I mean, we talked about this a little before the show started. This is you know, this is you know, this is not like some free thing that you're offering to the community. And I want to be clear about this, that this is how you feed yourselves too.
Yeah.
Kiana Dene wants to say something about
Well,
this.
I think some of what we talked about pre-show is the way that we as UUs tiptoe around money. And you are literally tiptoeing around.
I'm tiptoeing. I'm totally tiptoeing. Yeah.
And so that's what I'm actually laughing
we
at.
want people to pay you.
Right. So like, not only do we want people to pay you, we want people to see value in what you're bringing so that they want to pay you. do you understand how that sentence is different? It's not pay me, I did something. I'm doing something radical and amazing that you need, and it has a monetary value that's worthy of you investing in. And I think I will just own what I'm saying, which is we as a collective VUU culture have to come to a place where we can have conversations about money and have conversations about the economic realities of being in post and the downfall of capitalism. That I don't ask people anymore what they do for a living. I ask them how they participate in capitalism, because those are two very different things. Because what you do for a living is not how you survive capitalism, right? And because we all have to survive capitalism, we have to be able to talk about it. How can we dismantle capitalism in our brick and mortars or in our virtual communities if we can't even say money? How do I say, like how do, like there's this, so I'm not trying to be an agitator, but what I am trying to say is, are we ready to have a conversation about the value of our work, our labor, and our time in a way that really pushes us forward and moves the dialogue forward? Are we ready to have a conversation about the fall of capitalism and how we're going to do after this thing that we call a quarter that has the slave master on the front and this astonishingly amazing and beautiful transformative Black woman on the back of the quarter? Are we ready to have a conversation about the contradiction of that reality? If we're not, those are the things that are going to happen when you have a spiritual dinner. Those are the things that happened when my ancestors got around a fire and talked. So guess what? If I'm going to participate in an ancient religious activity, it is going to involve having conversations about money. It is going to have a conversation about how I value economics and how I'm going to survive after capitalism falls. So all of that sermon aside, I think it's important for us to think about how much labor we ask of brown people, of women, of non-binary folks to bring us on this journey of spiritual transformation. And if you are not willing to put dollars to the transformation you want to experience, then it is lip service and good day, sir. Good day, sir. So that is my sassy sermon for the day. And I will leave it there. But we can't be afraid of money and want results. Pick a hustle.
And it's so not necessary to be afraid of it. Like, we all know that people get paid, right? We all know that you take your money to the grocery store the same way everybody else does. And we absolutely know that people who are marginalized have more support when allies, quote unquote allies, come in, are transparent about money. We know this from studies. We know it from lived experience. We know that once people start sharing what they make in the workplace, folks with marginalized identities start making more. It's like one of the simplest ways that we can help tear this down is by talking about it. And there is no shame and blame. There, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people on this call have consulting gigs, like Kiana Janae, myself, Aisha, Emily, Don D. I don't even know if you do, Don. Like, yeah, and yeah, and so, and it's not like we do that, because we've created some wildly new concept. It's because we have an expertise that other people need, that we are happy to provide in exchange for the things that we need and want. In the same way that people that go to a bricks and mortar congregation or company or whatever do the exact same thing. They have skills and that they provide for a company or for themselves, in which other people exchange the things that they need in order to survive and thrive, right? So it's not somehow shameful. We all need to survive and thrive. All of us. Right now, in the way our society is set up, that's done through capitalism. Okay, let's talk about that. But while we're talking about that, over the Nourish, the Nourish dinner church, while we're talking about it, let's figure out the ways in which we help people survive and thrive now. There's no shame, there's no blame. It's just makes sense. So we've got to get out of this. We know our faith tells us that heaven on earth is already here, that we just have to realize it, right? Our faith already says that. We don't have to make that up. It's already part of our theology. So if that, if we're all in, well, let's just be all in.
as opposed to being vulnerable as a way to connect. And I want to say at some point when this pandemic-y thing is over, I want to cook with the two of you. Like, that just strikes me as one of the most fun days in the kitchen ever. Like, just cooking and talking and doing stuff. Like, oh man, I want to do that. Aisha, you had something else you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just want to explicitly name that if anyone's watching right now and is like, oh, they've gone off on a tangent, we haven't. This is the thing. This is the work that we do as Nourish, right? And we do it through the tool and the lens of gathering people for a worshipful meal. But this is it, right? This is the conversation, and then doing something with that we are trying to do, and is the reason we do this work. And we just happen to do it through the lens of dinner church. And so it just feels so powerful to be able to have these conversations with you all and name these things and think about them. And now I'm thinking about all these things we can add to other things we've done that can bring that in. So I just wanted to explicitly name that this was not a tangent. This is I do.
And I'm glad that I could demonstrate tiptoeing around this, so that we we can have this conversation. And I just want to be explicit that we invite the VUUers to hire Nourish, to sign up for your subscription service, to hire Kiana Dene to come bring you wonderful worship, to hire our consultants who have expertise, to bring them in and value their expertise in their ministry in explicit and monetary ways. Hire Tanner for your social media. We have so many people who have so much wonderful expertise, and we're so glad that you've put yours out into the world to be available for people to sign up for and be a part of your network. I mean, you have a subscription too, right? To your
Yes, for
network.
religious professionals.
Okay. I didn't
Yeah.
make that up.
Nope, that's absolutely it. Yep. And our rates go up soon, so sign up right now.
There
You know,
you
we're part
go.
of a whole movement of entrepreneurial ministries that are coming up right now. And so support our folks, pay them what they are worth. Folks are not getting a large salary from a brick and mortar right now. This is how we are surviving and living into our call and bringing the good news of Unitarian Universalism into this world. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you both for joining us on The
Thank
View
you.
today. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And everyone out there in the VUU land, we will see you back here at the same time, same place next week. And I'm not sure what's on the schedule, but it'll be fantastic. We always are. All right, y'all. Take care. Have a good week.
Oh, Sanctuary Boston. Cool. Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit CLFUU.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The View.